Kyle Underkoffler, Berg Brewing Company, Chambersburg, PA.
All right, perfect. And so, Kyle, talk to me a little bit about where we are exactly located in Chambersburg, as far as like if somebody's driving in, kind of the old "where would you find us" kind of thing.
Right.
So,
Well, we're at the junction of Route 11 and 30. So for us townies, that would be Queen Street and South Main Street. The address here is 100 South Main Street, Chambersburg, PA.
excellent. And you guys are under 6 months, under a year, as far as since you
Under 6 months. We're 6 months will be in January.
perfect. Give us a little backstory as far as the structure here. I'll have a few photos and everything like that, but for the most part, it's one of those things where you got to really get in here to feel this place. This is a
Right.
very unique experience as far
Right.
as the 2 stories and just the layout.
Yeah, definitely an experiential, unique location. This building that we're sitting in is 2 floors, original hardwood floors. You see the exposed brick. It was originally, the Chambersburg was burnt down in 1864. And when it was rebuilt, this specific building was called Shirk's General Store. And we're actually sitting in what we call Shirk's Lounge. And I'll get to that later.
Mhm.
But they rebuilt it as a general store, hardware store, and the family actually owned it for 100 years. So in the 1970s, it switched to Christian Light Bookstore. It's been numerous other businesses between the 1990s and today. Art gallery, bead company, among other things. And now it's a brewery. So when you walk in, you still get the feeling of that early 20th century coziness. Like I mentioned, the hardwood floor, the brick. We've kept some industrial aspects to it. We also have some rusticness here. We put all new lighting, all new HVAC, all new fixtures, all that sort of thing in the building. It was a very, very large undertaking from a demolition and a construction standpoint.
Absolutely. Did you guys do the exterior as well?
Yes, the exterior was repainted to match our logo.
Yeah.
New lighting on the outside. Of course, we had to pour for where the brew house sits. We had to pour. We had to rip out the existing wood floor there. We poured in a concrete pad. Had to build all that. We'll put footers in and build all that up so it could handle all the weight. And then we actually took the floor joists out from the brewery area and we repurposed them for all the treads and the stairs. So the stairs that we walked up today are all old floor joists. So we tried to
Yeah.
reutilize as much as we possibly could. The sign here above me says Shirks. That sign was found behind all the other signs that were on the front of the building. They're actually porcelain panels
Wow.
that were painted on. So 2 of them were broke. We got them reproduced. And obviously that part of the history was important to hang on to. We were like, what can we do with this? So we said, hey, let's hang it upstairs. And Shirk's Lounge was born.
I love it. Where when people come in here, what kind of different beers do you guys have, and not necessarily specifics, but like kind of are you rotating through different styles and everything like that?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I'm a big proponent of rotating styles. I concentrate on a lot of European styles. I'm a big European beer lover, England, Belgium, Germany, just to name a few. Obviously, everybody knows German beer styles more than others, but Belgium has a huge beer world of its own that you can just dig into and live in. England as well. There's a lot of underrated beer styles coming out of England, like
Mhm.
an ordinary bitters, all the pub ales, that sort of thing. Everybody forgets stout comes from England, imperial stout. Whole history there. But our brand is called Berg, Berg. It stands for mountain in German. Our last name is Underkoffler, Unterkopf from the German Unterkopf, which means under the head. So the name comes from farmers who lived in the foothills and the valleys of the Alps, and dairy farmed, and cowbells, sound of music type thing, right? So Berg being German for mountain, we wanted to kind of build our brand around doing more Eurocentric, simpler styles that have never died out. They're some of the most popular styles that are still in existence today. Not to say that we don't do American styles. Our one of our flagship beers, uh, is called La Creme. It's an American cream ale, right? And sells really well. People want to come in for something that's light. Cream ale kind of it fell off as a style. I think it's something that's very underrated within the United States. Kind of lost out to the American adjunct lagers, but it's cheaper to make. You can make it quicker, and arguably, you get some more complexity from the yeast fermentation and all that sort of thing. So, and we'll do we do some sexy New England IPAs. Right now we have a West Coast Pale Ale on tap called South Maine Pale Ale. Just trying to mix in some different styles to keep it relevant in the industry, but then, really be able to lean on the true time tested European styles that have been here for ages.
Nice. And how about the food and the menu and everything like that? Where do you guys kind of lean that way?
Yeah, so right now we're going through a kitchen transformation. Here into the new year, we'll finally have our own kitchen completed with our own chef, with our own exclusive menu. And it's going to be some of the terms that were thrown around is lifted gastropub menu. Lots of we call them Berg bites. Lots of shareable apps, and then a few entrees. Again, kind of tying in some of the not only some of the local cultural things, Pennsylvania Dutch, meat and potatoes, simplicity, but also taking that and keeping it original, but putting a twist on it to kind of lift it a little bit and match it, bringing some cultural aspects from some of the beer styles. So, for instance, we have our Springside Saison, which is a Belgian style, very humble style, but, putting that into a fish and chip beer batter, obviously beer cheese, and a litany of other things that we have planned.
Awesome. Let's talk about your story. So,
Yep.
where your role here and kind of are there, how does kind of everything lay out? And are you kind of brewing in the back? Are you managing the business, wearing all the hats? Like,
Yeah.
kind of, like walk me through your day to
A
day.
lot as a lot of other small craft breweries. Yes, I wear a lot of hats. Kind of do what is needed of you, especially at this point in our evolution as a business. I'm the owner and operator. I run this business with my brother. I brew all the beer here for now. I have some help in the side to be able to help clean kegs, prep for brew days, do all the dirty work. I do plenty of dirty work myself. My brother Adam, he's more of the business strategy. I'm more of an operational, coming from the operation standpoint. So, some days I'm taking out the trash. Some days I'm helping with our front of house staff. Some days I'm procuring equipment for our kitchen, spending money. That's really easy to do. So, my sort of role here is sort of everything, but the point that we're at now, we're starting to be able to delineate, okay, this is going to be your alley, your road to kind of cover. We have a great GM, Jim, who handles a lot of the front of house stuff. Marketing is kind of everybody's kind of pitching in. Some of the staff actually help out with that. So it's a shared responsibility that I feel like we have a lot of good buy-in from our staff and our leadership to be able to kind of cover all the bases until we get to a point where we can start. Okay, well maybe we can hire a third party to help with marketing, social media, all that sort of thing. Maybe we can start to, third party out some of these other things that help us along, because there's only so much time in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And when as I'm sure you heard and it's sometimes hard to find the hours in the day to even sleep, let alone get everything done in the day that you want to get done.
Yeah, that's very true. And then let alone, like, I don't have a brother I'm working with every day, so that must add a whole nother level.
Right. Yeah. They say never go into business with your family. My brother's 9 years older than me, so I've always been his little brother, but kind of living in his shadow in a way. But I tell you, there's nothing more rewarding than starting this business with him, and it's done really great things for our relationship in terms of having parity as men, as two men who have families of their own, and as going on, with going on an adventure with somebody that you love and trust. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that. We do really well working together. Yes, there are times when you're going to have your little foibles and quarrels and disagreements and debates and all that sort of thing, but that's business. I mean, you're going to have that with no matter who you go into business with. So, um, if you trust that person and can are always accountable to that person, I think that's one of the main that's one of our main strengths is we can trust each other and we can be accountable to each other without going off the rails.
I think that's the number one thing with family businesses, and that's majority of what I work with is family businesses, whether it be generational legacy businesses or they're all still all generations working together under
Sure.
this thing. And yeah, sometimes it doesn't work, and when it doesn't work, it's absolutely devastating
Yeah.
and rippling and all that. But majority of the time, it works, and it's really incredible to watch.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the thing is that the headlines get clipped the wrong way when it comes to that.
Sure.
And I think that at the end of the day, it is the trust piece. And one thing, being somebody that's been a solo entrepreneur my entire time, there's sometimes when I'm like, that'd be nice to have a partner that I actually trusted to lean on and bounce ideas off of. So
Right.
I respect and
Yeah.
I see it so much, and I just want people that are when are in family businesses, like, don't be feared about it. And what ends up being the issue that I see in my experiences, it's when there's not trust and not transparency within the family unit. Those are the times it falls apart.
For
And it's
sure.
like it's irrelevant from the business part because it
Right.
was inevitably not sustainable anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you have things like pride and ego, and when people say, "Hey, you need to set your ego aside," man, there's a difference between hearing somebody say that and then being in the moment and knowing that you have to literally pick your ego up, put it somewhere else. And, it's just the two of you sitting in a room, you shut the door. There's nothing, you're not going to lose anything by putting your ego aside. You're not going to lose any points. You're not going to lose any battles, but it's going to be a lot more easy to communicate. And your trust with that person, knowing that you're going to put your ego aside, it only builds trust that way. So we've been really blessed to have that sort of relationship. And furthermore with our staff too, I think from a leadership standpoint, we're trying to implement into our staff too. There's nothing that they can't come to us with that's going to be a world ending thing. We're going to have our crises as a business to jump, we're going to get past this crisis. Okay, we're going to jump to the next crisis. There's going to be things that we're going to iron out. There's going to be problems. There's going to be drama. There's going to be all those things, but it's that next step. What's the next thing you do when you have an issue? How do you approach it? So we've been pretty lucky in that aspect.
No, and you can tell the way, just to be honest with you, like, I will make fun of a lot of breweries when it comes to this. I walk into a lot of breweries when they're closed. And this is the first time in a very long time that somebody even paid attention to the fact that I walked in and like addressed. Most times people just walk past you, they ignore you.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like
yeah,
it was so like from a training and leadership
Sure,
standpoint, it was
yeah.
really nice that somebody actually came up and was like, "Hey, can I help you?" You know what I mean?
Right,
Most times
exactly.
it's like we're closed,
Right.
tunnel vision all the way through.
Yeah.
So
And from a really like holistic general standpoint, I mean, people want to, why are you coming here? You want to come to have fun. Maybe you just want to come to have a conversation. Maybe you want to come to sit down and work and be left alone. Okay, that's fine. But you have to feel welcome in the place that you want to come spend money. I mean, if you go into a place that's sterile and I mean, you're losing, I mean, that's the first step. I mean, it's the first impression. So yeah, we've harped on that pretty hard. It's funny when we're all downstairs, even us as owners and Jim as the general manager, when somebody walks in, they get like 10 hellos from like a litany of people, you know what I mean? And that, but makes somebody smile, and sometimes surprises them, but hey, we get a reaction.
tell them don't stop. Because from my perspective, like I said, I walk in and out of 20 to 25 doors a day, and it doesn't happen. Most
Oh,
of the
good,
time.
good.
So
Thank
it
you.
really is a solid data point there.
Good.
So
Thank you.
talk a little bit about like you and your brothers' kind of lives prior to this. What were
Yeah.
you guys both doing, and then where was the light bulb moment and kind of the precipice?
Sure.
Of, really, literally paint the scene for me where you were, what were you
Right.
doing, all that.
Born and raised in Chambersburg. Went to Cash's. I was a musician growing up in school. My brother, 9 years older than me, he um, he was an athlete, played basketball, track. He graduated in '99 and went to graduated from I'm sorry, Shippensburg University. Ended up going into the Marine Corps as an officer through OCS. He got commissioned. He spent 8 years in the Marine Corps. And then I came along as a musician, and I kind of did the same thing. I enlisted in the Marine Corps. I actually was in one of the Marine bands, Quantico Marine Band, as a trumpet player. That's actually where I was introduced to craft beer. Uh, when I turned 21, right? Somebody handed me a can of Old Chub from Oscar Blues, and it was in a 12-ounce can, and I think it was bought from. I think I bought it. I don't even know if I bought it. It was during March. It was after I turned 21. It was March Madness was going on because my birthday's in February, so it was getting into the tournament. And my buddy, we went to. I think there was a Wegmans nearby, and of course, Wegmans had probably one of the best beer selections at that time. This is back in 2009, something like that, 8, 9, and a can of Old Chub, and I just remember thinking, huh, funny name. And then I drank it. I think it's Scotch ale is like the base beer, and I just remember thinking like this is so much more than Bush Light. Nothing against Bush Light, or whatever we were drinking at the time. And I started kind of experimenting around, and they had down in Fredericksburg, they had a Capital Ale House used to be down there, and they had like all of when Dogfish Head still had the 750 milliliter, like I remember like Black and Blue and those beers and
Bitches Brew and all that
yeah,
stuff.
that stuff. But it was in the specialty stuff was in 750s, and I just remember just going on this binge of just exploring these other styles and just becoming so enamored with it, like and then researching the different malt, how they get it that dark and the hoppiness and all these different stories. As a lot of guys my age, Dogfish Head was a huge push vehicle to get my head wrapped around craft beer, what it was. And then I had a buddy that I served with. He actually was a home brewer, and he introduced me to the fact that oh, you can do this at home. I was like, what? Like I'm not going to make myself sick, that whole thing. And of course, so I bought my first kit, and being in Chambersburg, it's only 2 hours from Quantico where I was stationed. So I would come up. I bought my first kit, started messing around. The first beer was terrible. I pretended it wasn't. The same story that a lot of people have. And then I moved to Florida. My now wife and I moved to Florida to Tampa, and kept home brewing. Started working at a couple different breweries. Actually, before I left Chambersburg, I worked at the now defunct Roy Pitts. Kind of cut my teeth a little bit in there, volunteered in there. I was friends with the owners there.
I know Jesse and Ryan.
Jesse and Ryan,
so, yeah.
right? So they were so nice to me. Ryan taught me a lot about the fundamentals of working in a commercial space. Took that down to Florida, worked at a couple breweries down there, Florida Avenue. Same kind of thing, just cutting my teeth on understanding from a commercial standpoint, how does the equipment work? How do you do things in the brewery that you don't learn about home brewing? Because it's two completely different worlds. So that's where I got a lot of my commercial knowledge, and then I just kept home brewing, kept putting myself into BJCP competitions, seeing if I could get some medals, just get more or less getting my beer out there for people to review and try. Joined a great beer club in Tampa called the Tampa Bay Beers. X met every I think it was we met every other week. Bring in whatever beer you wanted, and they had a master not a master cicerone. He actually had his master cicerone certification. Had been all over. The name of the place was Mr. Dunderbox. If anybody's ever heard of Mr. Dunderbox or hasn't heard of Mr. Dunderbox in Tampa, it's outside of Tampa. Great place. They have a million beers to choose from, all sorts of European styles. Like you can find anything there. And Mr. Dunderbox himself, really taught that club how subtle, simple beer styles are, when done right, when made right with love and care, can be just as good as new, sexy stuff that everybody's chasing. It doesn't have to be a 10% imperial stout to taste good. It doesn't have to be the hoppiest West Coast bitter, rip the enamel off your teeth, West Coast IPA to be good. Take a humble Scotch ale. I remember him talking about, and he would go get a bottle of something. He's like, "This is made by this brewery. I've been there." Talk to the brewmaster, and that really kind of inspired me to what beer could be, even in its simplest terms. And that's kind of stuck with me even into our brand here now today, right? It's about, how do we go back to original? How do we go back and turn back to simplistic quality rather than chasing trends, rather than making something that's bigger, louder, more boisterous and with longer names and things that you can't remember, right? I think as an industry, craft beer needs to revert a little bit, especially with the evolution of drinking in the United States right now. Drinking in the United States right now is low. It's coming down. So what are we going to do as an industry to do something that's cool and shiny? And that thing might be to revert back to more originality, to more quality, to something that's more relatable rather than on the fringes and the edges and the extremes. So I digress. My brother, so I served in the Marine Corps for 4 years. I got out in 2011. So he and I got out around the same time. I moved to Florida. He was bouncing around the country. He lived in Texas for a little while. He lived in Boston for a little while. And then we both kind of moved back around the same time, 2017 time frame. I got a new electric 10-gallon brew house that my buddy helped, electrical engineer that helped me build in my garage. I started brewing more for my family, my friends, and I was just, that consistency was there. I was building out these styles that I really like, Springside Saison especially. And we kind of just put our heads together. We're both middle. We kind of looked at each other and said, "Hey, we're both middle aged. We're both really busy. We both have young children. But if we want to do something here in town for the community, for Chambersburg, for us, for our families, this is the time to do it." And we started building an idea, and we didn't want to do something that everybody else was doing. We wanted to create a spot that was unique and fresh, but also was relatable. And that kind of speaks for our whole brand. So that's kind of where we started. My brother, he's in the tech industry. He has a lot of business leadership strategy under his belt that is very, very valuable when it comes to this. It's not necessarily copy and paste because two different industries, but from a business strategy standpoint, it's invaluable what he brings to the table. And
I got multiple connections for you there. I like the Marine thing as well, so that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So go with that strategy. I want to hear. I'll be honest as well. You're one of the first brewers at the craft brewer level, not regional or corporate, that has ever used the word strategy in that sense.
Yeah.
So talk about why that is important for you guys. I didn't mean to jump and cut you off, but I want you to dive deeper on that.
Yeah.
Because the strategy piece is also a piece I feel like has been missing in the industry. A lot of time it's like, how do we get people in? How do we do this? And everybody's in the weeds because they're wearing so many hats that sometimes stepping back and seeing the strategy does get lost sometimes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of where we're in that catch-up moment now.
Yeah, sure. I'd say it starts with creating, we use some nomenclature around here. What's your beachhead? Which I guess you could extrapolate that and say, what's your vision? And one of the most important things, I think you have to be honest with yourself. Do not lie to yourself about what your vision is. Do you want to be just a local watering hole? That's completely fine. No disrespect, no criticism to that. But be honest about where you want to go. Do you want to go take over the world? Okay, good luck. Do you want to be a regional player? Do you want to be just a towny thing? All those things are completely acceptable visions, but they have their own strategy behind them. And so one of the things that we kind of ask ourselves is, if you had a map about this whole business, where you are and where you want to be, say, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, who knows? You have all this terrain in front of you. You have, mountains, valleys, all this thing. And in the industry, it's all sorts of things. It's barriers to entry. It's the socioeconomic things. It's people aren't drinking as much. It's competition. We have a saturated market. We have business. We have breweries closing. We have RTDs. We have marijuana with THC that's now coming in. That's a big player to this whole thing. We have new Gen Z who doesn't really want to drink, apparently, from what I hear. But the most important thing is, where are you? Where are we on that map? Because if you pulled out that map and you don't know where you are on the map, then you don't know anything. You don't know if you're 5 years down the road. You don't know if you're even at even on the map, right? So it's about being honest with yourself about what you want to be tomorrow, next week, next month, and everything that you do from a day in and day out perspective, every decision that's made, whether it's marketing, whether it's beer production, whether it's staff, every one of those decisions has to align with the long-term goals that you have set for yourself. How are we going to get into distribution? How are we going to get into distribution with having a 3.5 barrel brew house right now? I'm just hypothesizing, but these questions you need to be able to sit down and answer. And it's tedious, but you cannot lie to yourself. You cannot tell yourself, I'll figure it out. You have to be able to answer the question, why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I making a lager today that's going to tie up one of my conicals and then a bright for a long time? And then it's going to sit in kegs. Do I have the inventory? And what is this going to do for our brand moving forward? Are people going to like this Hellas lager? Why am I brewing a New England IPA today? Why am I going to brew a sour? Why are we going to hire this person? Why are we going to have a kitchen? Why are we going to do this? It's just about answering the question, why? But you have to have that beachhead before you get your license, before you start spending money. That would be my biggest piece of advice I could give anybody, is that whole map has to be drawn out with topography, with all the little creeks and valleys and rivers and mountains and everything before you step foot into doing business. Because if you don't have the answer to all those questions, or at least a semblance of what that's going to look like, you're making that barrier to entry so much steeper and so much harder.